Today, I am robbing the Bank of Spain. I'm gonna rob all the gold in the Bank of Spain.
They have hidden all the gold in that old wooden box. They tried to deceive me. Well tried, because now all that gold is for me. Wait, what? It's full of beer caps. What a fraud!
Is the famous TV show Money Heist realistic? Is the move from El Profesor realistic? In the last episode of the season 5, can you really bankrupt Spain by robbing 90 tons of gold? Is that threat credible? Are 4 billion euros enough to bankrupt a country like Spain? Those are exactly all the questions we're going to answer in this episode of Money Talk. Let's dive in. Well, before we dive in, I have to warn you, I'm going to reveal central elements of the plot, so big, fat spoiler alert. First, let's clarify what the robbers do. They assault the Spanish Central Bank, also known as the Bank of Spain, also known as El Banco de España. And in the vault of this central bank, there is a massive amount of gold reserves, and that is exactly what they're going to steal. In the vault of the central bank, they turn all that gold into little pieces to take them out of the central bank via the sewage system. A second team then take all those little pieces and turn it back into gold bars. Later, the robbers surrender. And they demand to be set free and to keep the gold. If the police refuses to cooperate, the robbers threaten to announce to the entire planet that 90 tons of gold have been robbed from the Spanish central bank. That news would supposedly spark a massive financial crisis, make the Spanish government unable to pay its debt, thus creating massive unemployment. In short, a terrible economic crisis. On the other hand, if the police cooperates, El Profesor, the mastermind of the robbers, will replace all the gold bars in the reserves by brass. As a conclusion, nobody will ever notice that the gold bars were missing because bars of brass visually look like gold. With that deception, if everybody thinks that the brass in the vault of the central bank is gold, the economic crisis will be avoided. And the final step of the plan, the police will then simulate a shootout with the robbers so that everybody thinks that the robbers are dead. The corpses of the robbers are then taken out of the central bank. The robbers then go to a tropical island, they keep all the gold, the economic crisis is avoided, and everybody lives happily ever after. But wait a minute, is that entire plot realistic from an economic point of view? That's exactly what we're going to see, but first we need to answer an even more basic question. What is exactly the place that they robbed? The Bank of Spain. Really, what is it? The team in Money Heist decide to rob the Bank of Spain, which is a central bank. And a central bank is very different from an usual bank, what we would call in economics a commercial bank. In a central bank, there are no deposits, you cannot ask for a mortgage at the central bank, you cannot withdraw money from the central bank, you cannot have a credit card from the central bank, etc. And there is a lot of confusion about it. The Bank of Spain is very different from a bank like the BBVA, for example, Santander, or whatever. There is one central bank per country, and the central bank is an institution that will decide what will be the monetary policy of a country. To make it very simple, the monetary policy will dictate what will be the interest rate in a country. The central bank will basically tell what is the interest rate you're going to pay on your car leasing, on your mortgage, on your credit card, also what kind of interest rate a company will have to pay when they do a big project like building a new factory. But you got the picture. The central bank will basically decide what will be the interest rate. That's it. And how do they do that? How do they change the interest rate? Well, very simply, they will determine what will be the interest rate by reducing or increasing the amount of money in the economy. When the central bank wants to reduce the interest rate, they will increase the amount of money in the economy. On the opposite, if they want to increase the interest rate, they will reduce the amount of money in the economy. Of course, things are much more complex than that. But what you know now is more than enough to understand the plot of Money Heist. La Casa de Papel. So now you may wonder, okay, the Bank of Spain is not a commercial bank, it is a central bank. But in that case, why do they have so much gold in the vault? Well, a central bank has a lot of assets in their vault to conduct their monetary policy. Let me explain. Let's imagine that the Bank of Spain wants to increase the amount of money in the economy to reduce the interest rate. What they're going to do is that they're going to print money, and then with that money, they're going to buy assets such as gold to commercial banks. The central bank will then keep all that gold in their vault. If the Bank of Spain wants to do the opposite, if they want to reduce the amount of money in the economy to increase the interest rate, they're going to do the inverse operation. They're going to take the gold that they have in their vault and sell it to a commercial bank and then put money in the vault. And another thing that you should know if you want to understand whether or not Money Heist is realistic. You should know that the central bank conducts such operations not only with gold, they also purchase or sell stocks, other metals, bonds, and currencies. So far so good. The robbers have sold the Spanish central bank, and it is completely normal that they have massive amounts of gold in the vault. So, Money Heist is realistic. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Not so fast. Yes, so far, Money Heist is realistic. But things are going to get a little bit squirrely. They're going to get a little bit complicated down the road. Remember, the robbers stole 90 tons of gold, which would be equivalent to 4,355,000,000 euros. And then they threatened the police to announce to the entire planet that those 90 tons of gold have been stolen, which would supposedly bankrupt Spain. Because people would lose faith in Spain, and that would start a domino effect. With the stock market collapsing, the Spanish government unable to get financing anymore, the economy taking a nosedive, and finally, lots and lots of people losing their jobs. Well, yeah, that sounds plausible. That's more than 4 billion euros. That's huge. It's enough to bankrupt any country, right? And they just stole all that money from the Spanish government. In reality, no. All the assets that belong to the central bank do not belong to the Spanish government. But wait, how so? The central bank does not belong to the government. It is an autonomous entity that is free to do whatever they want. It has nothing to do with the government. The central bank can conduct any monetary policy that they want, with or without the consent of the government. Of course, in practice, the central bank and the government very often collaborate together. But all of that goes to say that the central bank does not belong to the government, it has nothing to do with the government, and that is why the assets of the central bank do not belong to the government either. I'm kind of lost. In that case, what are those assets in the vault of the central bank? What do they represent? Here's a perspective you can adopt to understand a little bit better the central bank. The assets of the central bank will determine the value of the national currency, since the central bank is the issuer of the national currency. All the assets of the central bank are a backup for the national currency. They give value to the national currency. Coming back to Money Heist, if 90 tons of gold were robbed from the Bank of Spain, it would have nothing to do with the Spanish debt, nothing to do with the Spanish stock market. The only thing it would do is to devalue the national currency. It would make lose value to the currency of Spain. In that case, the euro. The euro would lose its value if 90 tons of gold were suddenly stolen. Because remember, what determines the value of a currency is the value of the assets of the central bank that issued this currency. And yes, if you devalue the currency enough by 15, 20 or 30%, it could create a domino effect. It could make the stock market crash, make the government unable to get financing, and create a massive economic crisis. But now the question is, are 4 billion euros enough to start this domino effect? Well, I guess so. 4 billion euros, that's a lot, that's huge. That's enough to devalue the euro by 15, 20 or 30% and spark this whole domino effect, right? Again, to answer this question, we have to look at the assets of the central bank. because the value of the currency is equal to the value of the assets of the central bank. Yes, 4 billion euros for people like you and me, for individuals, it is a huge amount of money. But for a country like Spain, for a currency like the euro, it is peanuts. Again, the value of a currency will be equal to the value of the assets of a central bank. So in that case, in the case of the euro, we have to look at all the assets that belong to the European Central Bank. Because Spain is part of the euro area, and as such, the Spanish Central Bank is part of the European Central Bank. But let's forget about this for a second. That's a technical detail. When we look at the value of all the assets of the European Central Bank, it is roughly 7 trillion euros. That's a 7 with 12 zeros. As a result, robbing 90 tons of gold worth a bit more than $4 billion would make the euro lose only 0.06% of its value. That's right, it's really not a lot. No, that's not a lot, and it's surely not enough to spark this whole domino effect that the professor was counting on. So there you see, 90 tons of gold is not enough to destabilize a country like Spain, and in that regard, the TV series is not realistic. In a realistic situation, the police would not have taken that threat seriously, and they would have arrested everybody. To conclude all of this, the poker move from El Profesor in the last episode of the season 5 is not a big threat enough, and the police would not have taken that threat seriously, and they would have not cooperated, and all the robbers would end up in jail. Sorry, Money Heist, you have been busted. Before you leave, I have a bonus for you, because there is a second thing that is not realistic in Money Heist. Let's assume for a second that the 90 tons of gold that they robbed is impactful enough to spark this whole domino effect. A plan from El Profesor was to replace all the gold by brass, so that nobody notices that the gold was stolen, and thus avoiding the whole domino effect. And El Profesor says that this fraud would be uncovered in maybe 70, 80, 100 years? Here again, it is not realistic. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said that the Spanish Central Bank is always using what they have in the vault to conduct banking operations to increase or decrease the interest rate by increasing or decreasing the amount of money in the economy? If one day the Spanish Central Bank decides to reduce the amount of money in the economy, they would have to take the brass that is in the vault and sell it to a bank. And there they would immediately notice that it is brass. And thus, this fraud of replacing gold with brass would be uncovered maybe in 2, 3 years, 5 years maximum. So again, if El Profesor would propose this kind of deal, it would not be accepted by the police, and all the robbers would end up in jail. Sorry, Money Heist, you have been double busted. That's it for this video about Money Heist. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. If that is the case, a little thumbs up is always appreciated. And if there is a topic you want me to cover in a future video, you can tell me in the comment section below. And I will see you soon.